Hey, welcome to San Diego Comic-Con at Home 2021. I'm Sammy Thomason Fike, she dash her, and we will be talking about our panel hosted by Bloomsbury called Flip It and Reverse It, Why Authors Reimagine Genre. I am super excited to be here. This is the actual coolest thing that's ever happened to me. So I am going to introduce myself and then introduce our wonderful panelists. Okay. So I'm a youth services specialist at a library in Mississippi. I used to be a bookseller, events coordinator, and social media coordinator at Square Books in Oxford, Mississippi. If you want to keep up with my reading recommendations, you can find my blog, Sammy Says Read, online, and all of my social media handles are at Sammy Says Read. Very easy. I'm just going to go in the order we have them written since I don't know what order will be lined up and when you watch this. So Kalynn Bayron is our first author. Bayron, excuse me. And she just told me how to say that. She's the author of Cinderella is Dead and is a classically trained vocalist. She grew up in Anchorage, Alaska. When she's not writing, you can find her listening to Ella Fitzgerald on loop, attending the theater, watching scary movies, and spending time with her kids. She currently lives in San Antonio, Texas with her family. Her website is KalynnBayron.com, and you can find her at Kalynn Bayron on social media. Our next author is Alexis Nedd. She's a Brooklyn-based pop culture anthropologist who has only ever loved things in a big, obsessive way. As a senior entertainment reporter at Mashable.com, she covers television, movies, and video games with a focus on sci-fi and fantasy universes like Game of Thrones and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. When she's not writing for money, she's writing for no money on Twitter, where her feed consists of deep dives on weird theory, Hamilton and messed up royal lineages are favorites, and analyzing pop culture as an artifact of society. Her writing has appeared in Elle, Cosmopolitan, Marie Claire, and BuzzFeed. This book, Don't Hate the Player, is her debut novel. You can find her on social media at Alexis Nedd. Lilliam Rivera is our next author. She's an award-winning writer and author of the young adult novels Never Look Back, Dealing in Dreams, and The Education of Margot Sanchez, as well as the middle grade series Goldie Banks. Her work has appeared in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and Elle, to name a few. Lilliam grew up in the Bronx and currently lives in Los Angeles. You can find her at lilliamrivera.com or at LilliamR on social media. And finally, we have Katie Zhao, is the author of the middle grade fantasy The Dragon Warrior and its sequel, The Fallen Hero. She grew up in Michigan, where there was little for her to do besides bury her nose in a good book or writing journal. She graduated from the University of Michigan with a BA in English and a minor in political science. She also completed her master's in accounting there. In her spare time, Katie enjoys reading, singing, dancing badly, and checking out new photo-worthy restaurants. She now lives in Brooklyn, New York. You can find her at katiezhao.com and at Katie Zhao Author on social media. So these are all our lovely panelists, and they all have books coming up, and we're going to get straight into it, and they'll let us know what books they're talking about. So authors, picture this. You're waiting in line at Comic-Con. Someone sees your author badge and asks you what your book is about. What is your elevator pitch? And why don't we start with you, Kalynn?
Yeah, so let's see. This book, This Poison Heart, is Little Shop of Horrors meets The Secret Garden with a Greek mythology twist. It centers queer Black families and is a contemporary fantasy, Gothic inspired, all things weird and wonderful, kind of everything and the kitchen sink thrown in.
Okay, awesome. Katie, would you like to go next?
Sure. So my upcoming young adult title, How We Fall Apart, is like Crazy Rich Asians meets One of Us's Line. And it's also got Gossip Girl, Pretty Little Liar vibes, and it follows this group of Asian American students in an elite prep school in Manhattan who are accused of being involved with their ex-best friend's murder by this anonymous figure on a social media app.
Awesome. Lilliam?
Hi, so We Light Up the Sky is my War of the Worlds inspired alien invasion story set in Los Angeles with three Latinx teenagers who each of them, they don't know each other. They're not super, close friends. They all have very different classes, economically, but they all have to join together, obviously, to overcome this destructive visitor.
And Alexis.
Don't Hate the Player is a star-crossed lovers trope book set in the world of esports. It's kind of if Carly Rae Jepsen's Call Me Maybe and Avril Lavigne's Skater Boy had like a sort of baby song called like Skater Boy, Call Me Maybe, Gamer Boy. And it's about a very popular girl who's secretly an esports legend and a very nerdy guy who finds out that the cool girl at his school is an esports legend and they have to keep her secret together, and they're playing each other in a giant esports tournament coming up. So best of luck to the both of them.
Okay, so now we're going to start with Katie, but I want to hear about your book's origin story. What was your aha moment? What made you decide, I have to write this book right now?
Sure. So I've always sort of had an idea for a book like this. Ever since high school, I had, I guess, a bit of an intense high school experience where I was like really determined to like prove myself and get like really good grades and get into top schools and everything. And I noticed that in my small town in Michigan, it was one of the more diverse areas of Michigan, and there was like a decently sized Asian population. And so like the Asian students, like a lot of us, were just raised by immigrant parents who very strongly valued education. So I found that, it was sort of a competition, even though it shouldn't have been a competition to get like top grades. So I thought it would be cool to write a book one day where, Asian American students actually do like sort of compete to the death with this murder at an elite prep school where they're all trying to be the top student. And then I ended up writing the book at the end of my college years, and now it's become How We Fall Apart.
Awesome. Okay, Lilliam.
So We Light Up the Sky, I was obsessed with all these kind of alien invasion stories. I've seen all the movies. I watched Attack the Block, so I grew up reading Ray Bradbury, The Martian Chronicles, all these things. So I've always wanted to envision what it would look like if, only like brown and black kids, like how would they react? Because all these movies, for the most part, always only just focus on like Tom Cruise. And so I just wanted, what would that world look like, if this crisis would happen, and it would happen only, through the eyes of brown and black kids. And so what also happened was one time, Elon Musk, he was doing some sort of space shuttle over LA, like over at Fairfax, and I live nearby Fairfax High School. And so I walked outside to try to catch this shuttle or whatever it was. And I missed it, but these three or four young high school kids, they were all Latino, were in front of my house, and I was like, oh, I missed it. And then they all said, oh, I got it. And they all showed me their iPhones with images of this weird craft, like spaceship looking craft. And also it's like, this is something here. Like these kids are this information is happening, and I could envision these kids like chasing after this thing. And so that was really what became like this moment of like, I want to write this story, I want to write this kind of like invasion story, and just really talk about like class and race, and who gets saved and who gets overlooked in those kind of environments. So, and that's where We Light Up the Sky came from.
Great. Okay, Alexis.
Well, Don't Hate the Player is actually based on a treatment from a company called Assemble Media, who wanted to have someone write a book about star-crossed lovers in the world of esports. So the idea for the sort of general, that part didn't come from me, but I knew that I really, really wanted to write this book when I submitted a sample, just to show them like, what would you do if you were to get this project? And the first thing I did was write a conversation between two characters. They barely even had names. And it was, one of them does not trust the other, and the other one needs to convince the first person that they're like cool and they can trust them, while talking about games. And just the dialogue, I was like, wait, okay, so she's going to be a Latina girl and he's going to be a white guy, and by the end of it, they're going to be on the same team. And when I finished it, I thought, I want to find out what happened before this conversation, and I want to find out what's going to happen afterwards. So I like incepted myself with the rest of this book from these first 2 pages. And once I actually got the project, I was so stoked because everything that I had been like storing inside my head as a really nerdy Puerto Rican kid growing up in a predominantly white space in New Jersey who was obsessed with video games, I had like journals, I had diaries, I was going back, I was like trying to do like just getting my own brain forever. And being able to express so much of that in this book and put it sort of in somebody else's words, somebody else's mouth, and then to just kind of watch it transform into somebody else's story was like amazing and cathartic.
That is awesome.
Can we just talk about, I'm sorry, can we just say that there's 2 Puerto Ricans up in here, everybody? Like, hey.
Boricua, Suepa.
Okay, I love that so much. That. Okay, Kalynn, if you want to share.
Yeah, so this Poison Heart, it's like a combination of things. I love musicals. I was obsessed with Little Shop of Horrors as a kid. And I also was, an avid reader. I read The Secret Garden and I saw that version of it. I don't know what year that came out, but that one, that more recent version. And also Greek mythology. Like I have been obsessed with that since forever. And so I had all these things kind of rolling around in my head. And then in like 2016, 2017, I read this article about this poison garden called the Alnwick Poison Garden. And it's just this collection of like hundreds of deadly plants. Like the guy who tends the garden has to suit up and wear this biohazard suit to go in there. And I was like, okay, so what if there was a secret garden, but what if what was inside was, something deadly? And what does that mean? And the story kind of evolved from there. And it's, it's just kind of a mashup of all of the things that I love. And it centers queer Black families, which is something that I don't think we see enough of. And it's this fantastical, adventure about secret family lineages and generational trauma and kind of learning to set those things down and figuring out really who you are and leaning into your power. And my main character, Briseis, is this girl who was born with this ability to control plants, and she doesn't really know what to do with it. And she lives in Brooklyn, and she's like, what do I do? And her parents are like, we're going to go out, to the sticks for the summer. And she's like, yeah, I don't want to do that. That's scary for her. And so it's really kind of about learning to be, to accept kind of who you are and to lean into that, and that it's okay to be scared, and your family should be there to support you. And I love Mo and Mom, who are her 2 moms. And it's just a story about family and fantasy, and it's Gothic inspired for sure. So yeah, it's just a lot of different things all kind of rolled into one. Really kind of fun for me to be able to write it.
Okay, and that perfectly leads into my next question, which we've kind of touched on, but it will be more fun to get more in depth. When you were writing, did you think about the genre you were writing and other works similar to it? Was there something like a trope or a perspective you wanted to do differently? And this time we'll start with Lilliam.
So, like I mentioned before, I was, I grew up reading Ray Bradbury, and I was reading a lot of the other books, War of the Worlds, and I just kept thinking, every time I would hear like even a little line that would just be like, their servant, like they would all of a sudden mention a servant, and then the servant there's no mention of that person ever again. And I was just like, what happened to that person? Like who's saving that person? I was way more interested in what was going to happen to them than to these people who are sometimes not Ray Bradbury. I think Ray Bradbury kind of mixed it up a little bit more. But so again, it's just this idea of who, I always imagined myself when I was a kid with my brothers and sisters. We always imagined, what if alien invasion happened? How would we react? And I just imagine, me being from like a city from the Bronx and just really kind of being aware of where to hide or where to go, and and utilizing that. And so I really wanted that just kind of just fall into like what these three kids, Pedro, Luna, and Rafa, and what their life is like, because they're already in a lot of ways on the outskirts of this city of LA, their own individual way. And so they're already navigating things that they already feel like an outsider in some ways. And so this is my thing of like how they would come together in a way that would make sense, and also in a way that would make sense that they would fall in love in a way, you know, like love would actually save them in a lot of ways. So I was also thinking about that book, that movie, James Dean's Rebel Without a Cause, because I grew up watching it a lot and when I was in high school. And I rewatched it again, and I was just like, oh, this movie is really about these three kids who fell in love. You know, and I was just like, oh, I need that. I want these three outcasts to find not only strength, but to find that they are capable of love, that they are capable of saving each other. So that was really, I don't know if I'm flipping the trope for that, but that is, I guess I am, maybe.
Oh, I think you are. I love how you combined all of those ideas, because it really does work like so cohesively there. When I was reading it, I was like, of course the outcasts are the ones who notice that there are aliens invading, because teens notice everything. So I thought you did a great job with that. Alexis, would you like to go?
Sure. So I read a lot of YA. When I was in the general YA demo, I read a lot of YA as well, but I was primarily a fantasy person. So when I knew I was going to write a contemporary, I knew that I had to update some stuff, because most of my tropes are kind of fantasy based. My workaround to that was I got to set a lot of scenes within the fantasy world of the game. So I'm like, haha, got you. Now there's, a zombie and an alien going on a date, and you can't do anything about it. But in trying to update the tropes, the main trope that I had is star-crossed lovers. And the gold standard of star-crossed lovers is Romeo and Juliet, which is not fantasy, but it may as well be. Because if one character in Romeo and Juliet has a cell phone, it doesn't even have to be Romeo or Juliet. The whole plot falls apart. Like one character, like the priest could have a cell phone and everything's fine. So I realized going in, I was like, if I'm going to do a star-crossed lovers contemporary, I have to find a way to make it that communication is not the problem. And so when my characters do meet, it's not that there's going to be zany misunderstandings and there's not going to be that many hijinks. They're pretty much on the same page the first time they meet each other, but that doesn't mean it's going to be easy, because communication is just the first step in finding out who you are when you're growing up and solving your problems and connecting with other people. So I just wanted to eliminate the layer of the trope where it's like, and they can't even be friends until halfway through the book. It's like, no, they're actually fine. And then from then on, it's off to the races.
And I loved how you use like the Discord channel between the characters, so we can read the subtext and what they're saying to each other, but we also know what they're thinking in their heads, and we can see how it really does line up. That is a really good twist on the
constant communication.
Yeah. Okay, Kalynn?
Yeah, so I thought about genre. I knew it was going to be fantasy. I knew it was going to be contemporary, but I really wanted these gothic horror specifically inspired elements. I really love gothic fiction. I'm a huge fan of the genre, and I wanted to do that against a contemporary backdrop, because, I just think it's fun, and I think blending genres is something that I really love to do, but it's something I love to read too. I've been on panels before with Lilliam, and she's heard me say this before, and she's gonna be like, you keep talking about that book, but Victor Laval wrote this book called The Changeling, and it has so many different kind of genre tropes all rolled into one, and they work perfectly. It's a beautiful book. It's scary. It's it's contemporary, set against this backdrop of New York, but there's there are these secrets, and there's monsters, and there are horror elements, and it's a fabulous book. And so I wanted to do something like that, where I brought in these different threads and kind of tied them all together within this story. But, you know, no matter what I'm doing, no matter what I'm writing, there's always like a ghost that pops up, or like something weird happens and it's just like a supernatural type of event. So I can't really get away from that, no matter what I do. So I just kind of leaned into it. And the contemporary fantasy versus the historical fantasy, which was Cinderella is Dead, you know, it's kind of like night and day, but it's so much fun. And so I keep genre in mind, but I'm not, you know, I'm okay with going outside of those things and kind of pushing the boundaries a little bit.
And I have to say, like, I'm from Mississippi, so I love a Gothic novel, but I especially love like a Southern Gothic novel. It was so refreshing to read something set in upstate New York because the vibes were all there, but it's a totally different thing. And I actually have a friend who lives in like Rhinebeck and Millerton, around that area. And I was like,
oh,
is
yeah.
this how the town is like? And she's like, no, that's actually pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and I've never like stepped foot in Rhinebeck, so I try to do it justice. Please don't hate me.
She
but
said
yeah,
it was great. She said you did
yeah.
great. So I thought that was
Okay,
super cool.
that works.
Okay, Katie, if you want to talk.
Yeah, so there were two main things I kept in mind when writing How We Fall Apart. One was that I'd never seen a cast of like Asian teens in a young adult thriller that takes place at a school. And two, I'd never really seen a dark academia thriller or, you know, school murder story that like actually really went deeper into like the psyche of characters to do something like that. You know, sort of like talk about the mental health of like this crushing pressure that students often face in high schools to get top grades and get into top schools. So when writing How We Fall Apart, I really, really wanted to write a book that really spoke to the experience that I had growing up, you know, and trying so hard to please my immigrant parents and their, you know, extremely high expectations. Because I've always been very thankful for everything they sacrificed to bring me and my sisters here. And obviously always want to live up to their expectations, but sometimes those expectations are just unrealistically high. And that's something that I've noticed, you know, with a lot of Asian friends and their parents and families. And then another thing is that mental health isn't really like acknowledged or discussed in Asian communities. And so I wanted to bring in that aspect into the story as well, and just show how like the dismissal of the way that this crushing school system, you know, places a burden on students' mental health is something that, you know, really, really crushes the kids and leads them to commit heinous acts in order to try to keep up with their classmates and keep up with these like really out of this world expectations. So yeah, those were the two main things that I kept in mind when writing the book.
Well, I think you nailed it. As someone who went to a really competitive high school, I was like, I know that kid. I know that kid. I hope they haven't murdered anyone, but I definitely have met those kids. And I think what I liked is that, you know, when people use that trope so often, they do the unreliable narrator. And I was like, no, this narrator is telling the truth. Like, she's being so straight up. It's so forthright. She's being like a high schooler, which I thought was really refreshing. So we're going to go into some more like personal questions about the book. So I'm going to like address each of you, but if anyone has an answer, they are welcome to answer because they are pop culture themed and kind of fun. So this first one is for Kalynn. We love your references to Greek myths in this Poison Heart, as well as your remix in Cinderella is Dead. If you could meet any character from mythology or fairy tales, who would it be and why are they awesome?
Oh my goodness. So I think if we're talking about Greek mythology, it's got to be Medusa. Like, I have nothing but love and adoration for Medusa. I think much like the stories that I write, you know, we think we know a certain thing about her and we really don't. And her story is, you know, is untold. And I think you know, I just think it would be, I don't know if I want to see her face to face. I'm not trying to get like, I mean, she's only turning the dudes to stone, so I'd probably be all right. But you know, Medusa for sure. And then fairy tales, like Whitney Houston as the fairy godmother in Brandy's Cinderella. Like if that is an option, that's the one.
That is an option, and I'm right there with you. That is the dream.
You speak my exact language. Those would have been my two answers.
Yeah.
I fully had Medusa picked as mine, so you really nailed it.
Cinderella with Brandy is iconic. Cannot
it's the
be
best. Beat. It's the only Cinderella I recognize. The only one.
Now that it's on Disney Plus, because it was not there at launch and I was about to riot, it's like actually on rotation whenever I clean on Sundays.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Yes. It's a rewatch for sure. Okay, this next one is for Alexis. And Don't Hate the Player, Amelia and Jake play Guardians League Online, which is hyphenated to GLOW, a team-based online gaming system. Is it based on a game you've played before? What do you love about team-based games? And which one is your favorite?
So it is, Guardians League Online is not based on any specific game for a host of legal and creative reasons. But I did draw from a lot of games, some that I have played, some that I have not played, because I knew I wanted it to be, 5-on-5 player versus player environment in like a fantasy combo sci-fi world. So that's a little bit of Overwatch, a little bit of League of Legends. There's like a weakness system in there it's just Pokemon. It's straight up Pokemon. There's the little bit of like Sims stuff in there as well. So anything that I've liked, I got to kind of make a little Franken game and then put my own twist on it. One of my favorite parts of starting this book was before I even wrote past that initial sample was I wrote what I call the GLOW Bible. And I have the lore of the game written out and all the characters. 99% of it is not in Don't Hate the Player. I just had a great time writing it as a reference that I went back and checked. So it was fun to design a video game that no one will ever play, but it's not based on anything specific. And what was the last part of the question? Oh, team-based games.
Yeah, what's your favorite team-based game?
These days I actually don't play that much multiplayer. Because as an adult, it's really hard to get, 2 or more friends in the same place, even if that same place is their own house. It's like wrestling an octopus. So I don't play as much team-based stuff anymore. The last one I did, I reviewed Marvel's Avengers, and that had potential.
Yes,
but as far as loving something multiplayer, the last one I was super into was WoW. Got to give it up for WoW. And the company in my game is called Wizard Games with these.
And some of the characters, some of the avatars in GLOW are almost mythology themed, right? Because there's the Pythia and the Pharaoh. How did you come up with that?
That was partially in the GLOW Bible, but almost all of those is just a reference to something I like. There's Pythia, Jake's snake goddess, who's a poison character. There's Pharaoh, who's kind of like a necromancer lich character. And then some of them are just references to my favorite wrestlers. There's a character called Balor because I love Finn Balor, and his name is also based in Irish mythology, I think. So yeah, there's a lot of that in there. If anyone knows me or the WWE or any of the games that I've played, it is a cornucopia of references to other things.
If anyone else is a gamer, it's a great time to jump in. My husband plays Destiny 2, and so I was reading parts of the book out loud to him, and he was like, that happened in my group. He was like, it's too real. The Discord is exactly like that. Okay, well, if no one's a gamer, that's cool. For Lillian, this question's for you. You've written other genres before, coming of age, dystopia, retelling, but We Light Up the Sky is your first sci-fi. How is world building different this time? And if you could choose a fictional character to help you during an alien invasion, who would you pick and why?
Oh man. So this is my first science fiction book, but it's not my first. I've written science fiction short stories. I attended Clarion, which is how I actually went to my first Comic-Con, because Clarion is held in San Diego, and then they would give us free tickets to go to Clarion, or free passes. So so I'm kind of like a nerd in that way. So I've written, scary stories, zombie stories, mythologies, all this other kind of stuff. So I love writing genre and world building. So the world building in this was the first time I'm writing in where I live. So I live in Los Angeles because most of my books are always centered in the Bronx, New York, or in New York in general. And so this world building. I looked outside, but also I was just really thinking about what does it look like? What would an alien look like? You know, and I was watching all those kind of alien invasion, you know, invasion movies, and I just really was thinking about what the textual feel of what an alien would look like. And this is before, you know, the visitor turns into basically cosplays as Luna's cousin, dead cousin, I should say. And so it's but I wanted to really kind of envision what does that look like. And I watched a lot of astronaut documentaries of what would it like for them to like go in space and watch this, you know, Earth and you know, first point of views of that, and also, and then I was looking at a lot of documentaries about the sea under the world, you know, because that to me is really alien. You know, if you're looking at an octopus, I don't know about you, but that to me is alien. And so all these kind of amphibians, and you know, for the pandemic we got a frog. So it was just, I was really fully invested into like what is alien, you know, what would that look like for me? And so that's where I kind of try to play around with that kind of world. And then, okay, so for me, you know, I always have to think about, you know, the Latinx kind of superheroes, you know, because that's where I'm always going. And so I think of like Rosario Dawson is always doing something, like she's always in a movie. And it's like always in a Marvel or something. So I'm like, you know, just give Rosario Dawson some power. And she could be, you know, she could help us. She could, whatever it is she does, you know, I don't care if she comes up like she did in The Mandalorian, you know, she shows up that way, we're good, you know, I think we'll be saved. So anything that Rosario Dawson wants to do, I think she'll be down.
Okay, good. Great answer. I trust her. I would love to hear from everyone because I think this is a fun question. Alexis or Kalynn or Katie?
Like who would I call to?
Yeah, who would you
like to help save the world?
Character, yeah, to save the world, and maybe you. Yes.
Where's Chris Jamal Evans this Comic-Con? Where is he? Hello, where is he?
He's getting his nails
that's
done.
who I would call. Yeah.
Good call. Yeah.
Oh. Keanu Reeves. He saved the world. He saved the dog. He couldn't save Bodhi in Point Break, but he knew he had to go out, you know, surfing. He's apocalypse buddy all the way.
Let's call Keanu. All right, Katie, do you know who you would call?
Wait, so is it like a celebrity figure?
You can pick a celebrity, fictional character, whoever you want, whoever you think will save you in the world.
I don't know. I don't know if like saying like Katniss Everdeen would be too obvious.
Totally fair.
I feel like I could depend on Katniss for anything. Like I would just hide behind her and let her do her thing and save the world.
She's got the survival skills. She's up for it.
Oh yeah.
Okay, and Katie, my next question is for you. How We Fell Apart gives off major Gossip Girl and Pretty Little Liars vibes. Are there any parts of the book that you pulled from your own high school experience? And what school from pop culture would you have wanted to attend instead? So
thankfully, like all of the murder stuff, none of that was real. There were no murders at my high school. It was a very like normal high school experience. But like I hinted at before, I did have, you know, I took like pretty much the most advanced track. So while it was a public school, so it wasn't like a private school or a prep school, I did like basically what a prep school workload would be, like APs. There was like a specialized IB, International Baccalaureate track. I didn't do that track, but I had friends who did, and their schedules were just wild, and they never slept ever. So, you know, a lot of like the really intense scenes in the book where the characters are like studying and like stressed over finals, and but also like they're being accused of murder. Like, you know, all of that intensity was me reaching back to my high school experience and pulling those emotions that I felt and putting them into the story, because I feel like if I'd had a book like this when I was a teen, I would have felt like, oh, it maybe, you know, it's not just me who's like feels like I'm doing badly or you know, just super stressed all the time. It's like pretty normal, I guess, or not normal, but I feel like there's some comfort in knowing that everyone's suffering together. And for the second part, sorry, what was the second part
Oh
of the
yeah, what
question?
school from pop culture would you have wanted to go to if you could pick one?
Oh yeah. So I thought about this question and I didn't like I thought about the like young adult schools, typically where some like Gossip Girls, Pretty Little Liars, like those kinds of schools where like prep schools, and some like gossip happens or murder or something scandalous happens. I don't think I would actually want to attend those schools, because I feel like it would be even more stress on top of like the normal stress of a high school. So I'm gonna cheat a little bit and I'm gonna say Camp Half Blood. I don't know if that counts as a
Love
school.
it.
But when I was really into Percy Jackson as a kid, I basically grew up with Percy because I was his age when the first book came out, and then I aged up with him. And I wished I could discover that I'm actually, half Greek god, half, normal person, and be whisked away to Camp Half Blood and, be with Percy and everybody. So yeah, that would be my answer.
That is better than anything.
It really is. It just comes down to Greek myths all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
I was like listing them all in my head, and I was like, everybody dies there. Everybody dies there. I was like, you could go to the, the Vampire Diaries school, but you're probably going to die. You're not Elena Gilbert, so it's over for you. Okay, so we're going to go back to questions kind of for everybody, and we will start with Alexis. What is your favorite thing about writing for a teen audience?
Well, Don't Hate the Player is my debut novel, so I've only ever written for a teen audience, and I found it very enjoyable. No, what I really liked knowing that this was going to be a YA novel is that I got to, like, I didn't want to be didactic about it, but being able to write characters knowing what I know now, and not just to like make them super smart and more mature than everyone else, but like being able to know, this person is going to say this and think this, and it's not going to be the best thing for them, but they have to figure it out for themselves, and kind of having that be a reflection on, what would I say to myself, to my teen self, if I could go back in time and get a message from me. I mean, I think I'd be very, very confused to meet adult me if I was like 16. So that sounds really like pedantic, like I'm going to teach these kids what I didn't know, but it really was just it was almost felt like going back and fixing and healing some things, and hoping that somebody can pick up on what I'm putting down and get there a little faster than I did. And if I could, if it helps one person, I'm like, did my job, good, feeling good.
And that so perfectly goes into the second part of this question, which is, what would you tell your teen self if you could tell them you were doing a panel for Comic-Con?
Oh, she would drop an entire litter of kittens right on the floor. She'd be very surprised. She would not believe me. And she would say, why didn't you get a haircut, and why are you lying to me, and get out of my room?
Fair enough. So Kalynn, what is your favorite thing about writing for a teen audience?
My readers, my young readers, they're so smart. They're so creative. They're so enthusiastic. They've showed me stuff on TikTok, which I'm not, very good at. They're just so enthusiastic in their support. And writing for young people is, it's the honor of my life. I take a lot of pride in what I do, and I think that when I get teens kind of reaching out to me, whether it's, email or DMs or whatever, and they're saying things to me like, this book helped me come out to my family, or this book gave me and my mom something to kind of bond over, or, those kinds of things that mean something. These stories are just stories, but they're also, affecting people's lives. And I think when you're a teenager and you're trying to figure things out and who you are and what you stand for, sometimes it's nice to have a mirror, and I just feel very honored to be able to do that. And yeah, I think my teen readers are great.
Okay, and if you could tell your teen self that you were doing a panel for Comic-Con, how would they react?
she would say, stop lying. Like, don't lie to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, you know, teenage me was going through it. So, you know, to kind of see where I'm at now versus where I was, yeah, it's you know, it's special. So I'm really happy to be here. But yeah, my teenage self would be like, yeah, no, stop lying. I don't know what your angle is, but stop. So
Katie, what is your favorite thing about writing for a teen audience? And that's especially important for you because you used to write middle grade.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that Alexis and Kalynn said. Like, what I love about writing for teens is that part of it feels like me healing, you know, old scabs from when I was a teenager myself. But part of it is also like knowing that you can make a difference in a teenager's life. And I feel like your teens are, you know, such important years of your life where you're really learning and seeing your place in the world, trying to figure things out, making mistakes and learning from them. I actually got a message from an early reader, honestly, like 1 or 2 days ago, that really touched me. It was from an Asian reader who like has similarly very, you know, strict immigrant parents, and she said that reading the book, like she's never felt so seen ever in her entire life, and that it's helped her already, like, you know, sort of like feel some solace in the fact that, you know, other people have gone through the same experience she did, with, you know, being forced to be really driven and competitive about grades. So that's what I love about writing for teens. And I also love that, you know, it's middle grade is like sort of like more of like my playground. I don't know if that's like the right way to put it, but I feel like I can be a little more like silly and, you know, just like throw like funny little one-liners into the book where, you know, with a serious book like my young adult, like it wouldn't really work like that. But I love that for a young adult, like you can be like very serious, but you know, you can also have like some of those heartfelt moments and just show teen readers the mirrors that they're so desperately looking for. And then the second question was, what would my teen self say, right?
Yeah.
About, yeah. I think she would be really confused because when I was a teen, I thought I was going to law school for whatever reason. I watched the movie Legally Blonde and I was like, I want that. I want her life. And it was also something I said, you know, to make my parents happy because they felt like, you know, being a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer, like those would be like the secure paths in life. And teen me did desperately want to be an author, but like back then I did, there were Asian authors, but not enough that I felt like it was possible for me. I felt like it just wasn't something that I could do because, you know, I'm Asian and my parents wanted me to do something else. So yeah, my teen self would be really shocked.
But hopefully excited.
Yeah, oh, definitely excited.
Okay, and Lilliam, your favorite thing about writing for a teen audience?
Oh, these are all great answers. I guess for me, it's usually, honestly, the stuff that I write, I always end up writing through that point of view. So I've written, you know, like adult, you know, literary stuff, or, you know, stories that are set with older, you know, adults only, and I love writing that too. But first stuff I've always written has always been through a person who's 16 years old, you know, and so then I know that that's my strong skill set. I do, and I love it. I love that kind of that age group. That's like really a discovery of first, you know, that you discovered your sexuality, you discover that your parents are flawed, you discover, you know, that you don't want to go to law school or, you know, all those things, right? Those are all those discoveries. So I really love kind of like writing about those moments, and they're so raw, and they could be really dark, and they could be also really beautiful, and a new romance and all those things. So I really love writing in that. And it's, you know, and the extra thing is that being able to speak to young people and having them connect with those themes as well. Like, I'm like, because they'll tell you if you're doing it wrong. They will let you know, or
That's
they won't be
true.
interested. So I'm glad that I'm somewhat able to. And it's a blessing for anyone to connect with anything that I've read. So that's really cool. And if I were to talk to my teenage self, or she were to find out that I was going to Comic-Con, she would not be surprised, because girl, she was a nerd then, and she had, glasses and braces, and she was reading comic books and watching science fiction stuff. And so she was ready. She would be primed to go to Comic-Con. So she'll be like, of course you're going, girl, you've been ready for this. So it wouldn't be a surprise.
That's awesome. Okay, we have time for one more question really quick. And just shout it out when you think of something. What book, movie, comic, or game are you looking forward to this year?
Lore Olympus comes out in October, and I got an arc and yes, and I got to blurb it, and I love it. And I obviously have been following the webtoon, but the translation from webtoon to graphic novel is spectacular. It's going to be amazing. I'm so excited for that.
I am speechless with jealousy. I have begged for an arc and not gotten one. If they are watching this now, please send it to me. That's amazing.
I feel like I have to rep for games. I hope it's still coming out this year, but I'm really looking forward to Horizon Forbidden West. I played Horizon Zero Dawn just in the beginning of this year. I waited a really long time, but it was like one of the PS Plus downloads, and I smashed through it in a week. And I realized as I was playing it, I have never played a video game where it was an only female protagonist the entire time. I didn't play the Tomb Raider games, so I get that they're like, Lara Croft does exist, but it was my first time where it's like there's no character creator. I didn't choose to be this girl. She is just the protagonist the entire time through. And having that realization after having so much fun, I'm like, God, it's good to be a girl gamer now, these days, right now. And so the sequel should be coming out, and I am hyped for more Aloy.
I'm actually playing that right now. That's so cool. Yes,
Wait,
it is amazing. Yes, I just started.
She's great. Ashley Birch is an amazing.
She's so good.
It's Comic-Con. Ashley Birch is an amazing voice actor. And
she really is the best.
She's fantastic.
Oh yay! I love this.
Okay, I'll just say because I love Star Wars, but I love Rogue One. And I'm super excited about Diego Luna starring in the Star Wars Andor series that should be coming on, I guess, on Disney. And yeah, so nerdy girl, because I was in this year I was able to write like an Empire Strikes Back short story for their anniversary anthology. And so I'm just like, okay, Diego Luna, all the Latinos, all up in space, the Mandalorian, whatever it is, I'm there. So I'm hyped about Diego Luna starring.
Yes, Latinos in space is my favorite Star Wars trope.
Yes.
Exactly.
I'm super excited for She Who Became the Sign, which is an adult Chinese-inspired historical fantasy, I believe. I've just been like seeing it everywhere, and I haven't read it yet, but I did download there was like a chapter sampler, I think, on Amazon or something, and I read like the first chapter, and I was like immediately engrossed in the world. So yeah, I'm really excited for that book. I feel like it's going to take over like the adult fantasy world.
This is so coincidental. I did just finish that book last week. It is, yeah, it's amazing. Everyone's comparing it to Song of Achilles, but it's much more in the vein of the Poppy War, which I don't know if you've read that one.
Oh my God, it's only like one of my favorite trilogies ever.
I feel like I'm in a room full of people who get me, like we're all on the same thing. Yeah, so She Who Became the Sun is amazing. Really strong Poppy War vibes. Also like tiny Avatar The Last Airbender vibes, which I loved. It's so great. Yeah, I mean, it's going to shake up everything. I think people are going to really love it. Okay, well, that's all our time, but I'm sad because we've been talking about so many great things. We all love the same things. Thank y'all so much for doing this. This was so, so cool, and your answers were so thoughtful and wonderful. Thank you to everyone who watched. We are so excited to be at San Diego Comic-Con at home 2021. It's so crazy and so awesome. So I think that's it for us. If you want to wave goodbye to the people. Goodbye, people. Thank you.